All right, it's 6:32. In the interest of time, we'll go ahead and get started. So welcome to our K-5 Elementary Night. I'm Sarah Moore. I'm the Supervisor of Elementary Education for Curriculum and Instruction.
Great. So I'm going to formally welcome everyone. Hello, everyone. I'm Kim Tu. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, especially as it is so beautiful out. If you joined us earlier, you heard us all chatting about how gorgeous it is and how we all want to be outside. But fortunately, we have another nice day. Not as hot tomorrow. So thank you for joining us. For those who can't join us, you see that we are recording this presentation. So this will be uploaded on our website. Hopefully tomorrow is usually our goal the next day, as well as a copy of the slide deck of the presentation so that you can review it at your leisure. So two things I want to kind of get started with. There's a lot of controversy and questioning about elementary enrollment. We said that after spring break, we would come back together and start providing the community with dates and conversations and trying to solicit more input from our elementary constituents. So that communication will be sent out shortly. It looks like we're looking at a virtual night on April 27th. It is a Thursday, and that communication will be sent out to the district shortly. We're going to start with a whole district virtual meeting and then probably doing some breakout rooms by school because we think it's important to kind of have messaging across the district at the same time, talking about the issues that we're facing with enrollment and various scenarios to address them and soliciting input. And then there'll be follow-up from that meeting on. So that communication will be sent out. Tonight's focus, though, is about our K-5 elementary programming. And we're so proud of the work that we're doing in Princeton. And we will have time for a question and answer session at the end of the chat tonight and the presentation tonight. And you can basically at the bottom of your screen, this is a webinar format. You can type your question in the Q&A, little bubbles down there at the bottom, and we will address it. I would just ask that we talk in generalities. We might not be able to answer specific questions about your child in programming. That would be something that your teacher or counselor or administrator in your building could better answer, or Sarah and myself, and we're happy to address that on a one-to-one basis. But tonight is more questions about general programming. So we're thrilled to share, as I said, about the great things that our district is doing and what's happening in each of our buildings. And we really have some phenomenal staff with us tonight. We're all going to start introducing ourselves in a second. This is an amazing team that's just a small representation of the larger amazing team that we have across our 4 elementary buildings. And so they're going to talk to you about different facets of the programming because they're the experts in the programming. They deliver it to your student and your child every day. And I also want to take a moment to thank the admin team who are available and who are on this call, who lead our buildings. They're a wonderful group to work with, and I think they do so much to support our students. We had an elementary admin meeting today, and I always leave those meetings invigorated and excited about the work that we do because they really truly are a team. And I can say that no matter what building you're in, you're getting a really great Princeton experience because of the leadership of those buildings and the staff that work there. So thank you all for that, and we'll get started with introductions.
All right, so Dr. Tu and I have both introduced ourselves. Mary Ellen, would you like to unmute and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, welcome everyone. My name is Mary Ellen Wallauer, and I'm one of the instructional coaches for the elementary schools, all 4 buildings.
Thank you, Mary Ellen.
My name is Ken Eicher, and I am an AIS accelerated intervention support teacher and the curriculum teacher leader for language arts at Riverside.
Hi, my name is Christina Avena. I am one of the speech language specialists for the district, but I am based out of Littlebrook Elementary School.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Seelenfreund, and I am a 3rd grade teacher at Littlebrook School.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. So glad to be here with you all. My name is Lauren Samara, and I am the other elementary instructional coach. I work in all 4 buildings as well.
Hi, my name is Marian Figueroa Toro, and I am the 3rd grade Spanish DLI teacher at Community Park, and I'm also the math CTL.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jenna Peluso. I am brand new to the district, just started right before spring break. I am the new gifted and talented educator, the program that we're calling Quest.
Hi, everyone. My name is Martha Friend. I am the pre-K to 5 STEAM lab teacher and enrichment teacher at Littlebrook.
Thank you all so much. I'll hand it back to Dr. Tu.
So we want to couch this presentation in our strategic plan. And so the first goal of the strategic plan is the focus of the early years, age 3 to grade 3, and looking at our early literacy and math achievement and how can we strengthen the foundation of those two really important subject areas. Not that the other content is important, but measuring and tracking the progress in those areas of our students to ensure that they are set up for success later on. And some of the programs that we're going to be talking about today show that emphasis on literacy and numeracy. We're also going to talk about wellness, inclusion, and supports for all with programs for social emotional learning, such as responsive classroom, and how we're utilizing and building community in our classrooms across our elementary buildings. And finally, opportunity and achievement for all. What services and supports do we have for students who might need a little bit of remediation and support, maybe because of the pandemic, and also students who need enrichment and how they can have a better experience to meet their needs in our school district. So all of the programs we're going to be talking about are directly aligned to our strategic plan.
Okay, so I'll be talking about Early Bird, which is a new initiative that we started this year. This is the dyslexia screener that we have chosen to use in Princeton. It's really cutting edge. It was developed at Boston's Children's Hospital, is developed and validated through them. It's a game-based platform, and it is an amazing predictor of dyslexia and other reading challenges. We piloted the program in both kindergarten and first grade this year. We felt that it was most appropriate for our first grade population. So we will be giving another round of the screener in first grade this year. And then next year, we will be doing 3 administrations of this in the fall, in the winter, and this spring to make sure our students are where we want them to be. Through the screener, we're measuring things like phonological awareness, auditory memory. It is one of the most comprehensive screeners that I have encountered in the many years that I've worked as a dyslexia specialist. The other thing is it makes us in compliance with state law, which requires us as a school district in New Jersey to screen all of our students for dyslexia by the end of second grade. For students who move in after first grade, we'll be using DIBELS, which is what we previously used for our students. And we'll be using that to screen children who come in second, third, fourth, or fifth grade and who have never been screened for any sort of reading difficulties in the past. One of the other reading assessments that will slightly change this coming year is we've used the developmental reading assessment version number 2 for many years. That has been retired, and the new edition is the developmental reading assessment edition number 3. So we will be using that to assess students' reading levels in grades K through 5. This gives us a different information than what the Early Bird gives us. This will give us information about what the student's reading level is. Are they on grade level when they're reading authentic text? So we'll be assessing them for both accuracy and for words per minute. We'll also be assessing them for comprehension, for their ability to summarize what they've read. And this includes both fiction and nonfiction texts. It's a pretty standard reading assessments used in school districts across the country. AIS, which is accelerated intervention, is every building has at least 2 AIS teachers. I am one of them at Riverside. So as AIS teachers, we step in after we have assessed students based on the number of different assessments that we've given to determine whether or not they need any sort of extra support to shore them up in either math or in language arts. We, for math, are using 2 different programs right now. We have a program called Bridges, which we are using for the intervention model. And Ready Math, which is used in the classroom, has an intervention model that we use as well. If either of those don't work, we try other things. We explore other options to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the students. For English language arts, we are using the Institute for Multisensory Education, or IMSE, or IMSE, Orton Gillingham methodology. All of the AIS teachers were trained in the IMSE Orton Gillingham method by Mrs. Moore this past fall. It's a fantastic program, and we will be replacing that in we will be replacing foundations, I should say, in grades 1 and 2 this coming year. So the IMSE Orton Gillingham method, or structured literacy method, or if you want to call it the science of reading method, is what will be used in all grades KM1 classrooms, in addition to more intensive instruction through the AIS teachers. I think that is all I have to say. Is there anything else I need to add about AIS?
You're great. Thank you so much, Ken.
Thank you.
Christina, we'll go to you.
All right, so Lexia Core 5 is an online-based program that's built upon the science of reading and structured literacy. It's intended to help students provide equitable learning opportunities for all students across the grade levels. What's really nice about this program is it delivers both systematic and explicit instructions that they need to comprehend, retain, and apply those literacy foundational skills. And what's really nice is that this is personalized to each learner. At the beginning of using the Lexia Core program, each student is essentially leveled, and it's leveled to their need, not to where they need to be, which then is able to provide the teacher both valuable information in developing appropriate differentiated instruction within the classroom setting. The really nice part about Lexia is it does focus on those core literacy skills and developing reading skills. Similar to the Early Bird Screener, it focuses on phonological awareness, which is that recognition of sounds within words. Phonics, which is understanding how sounds and letters kind of go together. Structural analysis that looks at breaking down parts into more meaningful pieces. Fluency, so reading smoothly with expression and appropriate prosody. Vocabulary, which is an important key part, especially in the lower grades, building those tier 2 and tier 3 vocabulary systems in place. So that way, when they do get to 3rd through 5th grade, that they're able to better understand those science, social studies, other areas, understanding, as well as to build their comprehension skills. And the next slide that's going to be in place is just an example of what it looks like for students. So I just picked a level 4 and a level 16. It kind of gives you the program that shows what kind of tasks that they would do. Usually there's 2 levels. There's a first half and a second half, and they'll work on the same 5 skills. But on the bottom is what's really important. And this is what focuses on going from a standard instruction to a practice to a direct instruction within the program itself, which is really nice. Thank you, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Excited to talk a little bit about math workshop with you tonight, and in keeping in line with the ideas of these overarching ideas of foundational skills and really meeting students where they are, providing differentiated instruction. Math workshop is the perfect companion to that because it's not a curriculum, it's a framework for teaching and learning. And it might sound familiar because you might have heard of readers workshop or writers workshop. So math workshop follows the same flow, where we have a teacher providing a mini lesson with a specific learning focus or learning target, and then students really drive the bus of their own learning. So with small group instruction. So math workshop is a great way to build math engagement and build mathematical community in any classroom. It also, one of the best features is that every student, every learner in the classroom is really valued for what they bring to the table as far as their mathematical thinking is concerned. And it's different from old ways of learning math, where maybe you thought you were good at math or just not. Everyone is good at math when you have a math workshop framework built into your learning, into your classroom. It's very hands-on. You won't see students sitting at their desks very often, with the teacher standing in front and giving a lesson where everyone kind of copies down work in their workbook. There are learning stations where the kids really do have hands-on opportunities with learning games, digital components. There will be a teacher leading a group and lots of students doing engaging in mathematical discourse together, even from kindergarten level. So that's really empowering. One of the cornerstones of math workshop that really also lends itself to the responsive classroom and how we're trying to build that type of community in Princeton Public Schools, it relies very heavily on clearly established routines with high expectations. So from day one, students will be immersed in learning routines, number sense routines, routines to know how to care for their materials, to care for one another, to respect others, that become just a part of how they interact with one another in the classroom overall. But it really helps to strengthen the choice and agency that they'll be provided through the math workshop approach, and the level of independence in the classroom will really soar. So the routines are a very important part of engaging with math workshop. Again, the discourse that you'll hear kids, the way that kids will be talking about math in a math workshop classroom is pretty remarkable. So I think that's one of the biggest things that you might notice if you were to step into a classroom where kids are in a math workshop. For K-5 classrooms, we'll really be leaning on the professional guidance and professional development opportunities from Jen Lem, who's renowned in the field, and she's also a math coach, author of her newest book, Math Workshop. Some teachers have already began a book study using this book, and her framework really supports high expectations for all learners in the K-5 classroom. So we'll be leaning on her professional guidance as we continue on with our journey. The next slide just kind of showcases a little bit about what math workshop is and is not. And I guess you could see just from these 7 characteristics that it's really different from maybe a math class that you might have been in when you were younger. It's not going to be a teacher leading the class with what they feel that, how this problem should be solved. It's really students engaging in the work themselves, making choices. The teacher is really facilitating that knowledge and clarifying, making connections. You won't often see students sitting quietly at their desks raising their hands for help. We want students to engage in productive struggle. So the differentiation component comes in where teachers are going to do a lot of data collection, whether it's formal data collection through some assessments and a lot of observations where they're taking notes and really gleaming how the student thinks about math based on what they can observe. And all of those things will provide opportunities for the student to really tailor their teaching to what that student is showing readiness for. So I think just based on this slide, it's pretty clear that this is a really dynamic way of teaching and learning math, and it's very exciting to see it unroll in more classrooms, as we go along with our learning.
So I'm excited to share 2 new opportunities that were launched this year for our elementary students. That is the Continental Math League and Scripps National Spelling Bee. These opportunities were completely voluntary, and as you'll see on the next slide, we had a phenomenal turnout for both. The next slide we'll share some more information. Continental Math League was open this year to all 4th and 5th grade students, and each one of our elementary schools had their own team. We had 172 participants this year, which is amazing. And students participated in 5 meets from November through March, where practice problems were sent home, and then students would come and gather in a designated space in their school. They'd work individually for 30 minutes on 6 math problems. And these problems were not solely rooted in calculation. They really call on above average reading comprehension skills, analytical reasoning skills. So really pushing kids to think outside of the box and extend their mathematical thinking. And I'll try and figure out how to pop in some of the samples into our Q&A. As an adult, they were quite humbling to try. So kudos to our kids who are just amazing, and watching, their resiliency and how they support each other and working through, such detailed work. On the English language arts side of things, we launched the Scripps National Spelling Bee. That was open to students in grades 1 through 5 and was again held in each elementary school in February. We had over 200 participants this year, which is just amazing. And I had the pleasure of serving as a judge in one of our schools to see how the kids supported each other and how proud they were and how seriously they took the opportunity was just incredible. Word lists were sent home for practice and review. The words are selected from the Merriam-Webster Unabridged Dictionary for the spelling bee, and the kids really hit the ground running. It was incredible to watch what they were capable of. So I'm just thrilled to be here today to celebrate their efforts. And our school champions actually got to move on to compete in a regional qualifier competition, which is very exciting for them. And we are looking to continue both of these programs next year. So stay tuned, as they are again voluntary through parents.
So I'll be talking a little bit about our new structured literacy incentives. So currently, structured literacy is more of an umbrella term, right? It encompasses programs like Wilson, like Foundations, Words Their Way. So these are systematic programs that focus on elements of teaching literacy to students. So all of our kindergarten and 1st grade students and 2nd grade students use Foundations, which is a structured literacy program. And all of our 3rd through 5th grade students use Words Their Way. While these programs have been around for a while, we're looking to bolster and enhance, and tying back to that strategic plan of really creating multiple opportunities for students, we're looking to add even more offerings for them. So starting this summer, all kindergarten and 1st grade teachers are going to be trained in structured literacy. This training is a 5-day long, 30-hour intensive training. So we're really giving our teachers the most cutting edge professional development to help with foundational literacy skills. So the National Reading Panel outlines that there are 5 key pieces that you want to focus on early literacy for our students. One being phonological awareness. So understanding how a word like cat has 3 sounds represented, at, and being able to pull them apart and blend them together. We think about phonics. So the fact that cat is spelled C-A-T, and a student can read cat and put it together to make cat. Then we're going to focus on vocabulary. So understanding that a cat is a feline, and what does that look like, and have they seen a cat? Do they have a cat in their home? We're also working on fluency. So how students read, how they practice prosody and intonation in their voice, and their fluency rates. And then we're working always towards the ultimate goal of comprehension. We are teaching students how to read so that they can comprehend information. So our structured literacy block will now build in all 5 of those elements rather than just a few that Foundations currently has. So we're again going a little bit deeper in that curriculum for our students. That new structured literacy block will replace our Foundations block in fall 2023. So in September, students will be starting in that structured literacy block in K-1. Next summer, all 2nd and 3rd grade teachers will go through our 5-day training. Foundations and Words Their Way will be replaced with the same type of daily structured literacy block. However, for 3rd through 5th grade, that structured literacy block looks a little different. We don't need to focus on things like phonological awareness. We need to shift more to morphology. So how does Greek and Latin, how do those root words impact our English language? Do I know that hydra means water? Then I can unlock words like hydrosphere, right? And breaking down that meaning for parts for students makes learning more accessible with those high-level vocabulary terms. And then the following summer, all 4th and 5th grade teachers will take the training. So within 3 years, we'll have a very tightly aligned structured literacy block. For our early learners, those are really foundational literacy skills. And for that 3rd through 5th grade range, we're focusing on that deep morphology work and structured writing and deep comprehension skills. So that's meant to act as a complement to our readers and writers workshop block.
Ooh, my turn. Okay, so I will talk a little bit about dual language immersion. Dual language immersion program is open to all Princeton Public School incoming kindergartners and 1st grade students, regardless of their neighborhood. A new student who has participated in an immersion program in another district can apply. And attendance at a parent information session is required for entry to the program. So just are sort of like general things. Oops, sorry. And specifically dual language immersion at CP, students in kindergarten through 5th grade spend approximately 50% of their core academic day or learning in Spanish and the other 50% learning in English. Students learn math, science, and Spanish language arts in Spanish, and language arts in English, and social studies in English. And as for the middle school, once the students graduate or move on from CP, in the middle school, the DLI program consists of 2 courses, a Spanish class and a social studies in Spanish. That's it.
Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be speaking with you about Responsive Classroom, which is not a curriculum program per se, but it is an approach that sort of touches all teaching and learning that happens in our classrooms in PPS. And it's a really important facet of building a community, both in each individual classroom and in our school as a whole. So you can see the 4 key domains of Responsive Classroom on the screen. But I want to highlight that Responsive Classroom is really focused on the learner in giving choice to each of our students, helping them have a voice and be engaged in their learning day to day. As I said, we want each student in each of our schools to feel welcomed and a part of their classroom and school community and have a joyful experience each day at school. Responsive Classroom gives teachers tools to help have effective classroom management and to be proactive with students rather than reactive to their behaviors. And all of this is framed in a developmentally responsive lens, which means teachers really meet students on their developmental level, get to know key hallmarks of their grade level, and help reach students where they are. So some ways you might see this in a PPS classroom will be on the next slide. So you might hear your child talk about morning meeting or closing circle, which is times when all of our students come together and greet each other or say goodbye to each other and play a game. There are energizer breaks to let loose some of the energy. I'm really enjoying quiet time this year, which is a reset after recess. We want our teachers to be using positive language, as well as having classrooms that are organized well for student use. And then some of our beginning of the year and throughout the year procedures that help our day run smoothly. Responsive Classroom has been a part of Princeton Public Schools for a long time, but after the pandemic, when we could finally come together again, we definitely renewed our focus on this. I was lucky this summer to attend the level 2 Responsive Classroom training and then share some of what I learned with my coworkers at Littlebrook and others across the district. More will have this level 2 training again this summer, but many of our colleagues are Responsive Classroom trained. It was something I went through when I was first hired in the district. And then on the next slide, here are just some images of what it might look like in a classroom. This is from my own class at Littlebrook. As I said, we like to start each day together. We like to build hopes and dreams for a school year and what we want to accomplish. And that might lead us to having some sort of rules or a promise that we make with each other that we try to stick to throughout the year, as well as some choices for our learners in the classroom. So thank you.
Okay, hello again, everyone. Again, I'm new to the district. I'm Jenna Peluso, the new gifted and talented teacher. And I will say that because this is a new program to the district that we are rolling out from scratch, I'm going to take a little bit more of your time We've really hit the ground running since I started to get this program off the ground for the fall. So tonight's just going to serve as a brief introduction. I could talk about this for much longer than we all care to give our time for tonight, but I'm going to give you a brief overview of how the program operates, what it will look like, and how we're going to get it rolling starting now for the fall. Okay. Oh, and just to be clear, there is a lot more information in addition to what I will be sharing with you tonight on our district website. So if you go to the district website under academics, there is now a link for Quest. Everything that I'm sharing with you tonight, plus much, much more information will be on there for you to check out. So make sure you give that a look. All right, so let's dive in. Quest, where did that come from? So all of us as human beings, we're on a quest for more knowledge, right? And on this learning quest, we do things like ask questions and we uncover truths and we explore new things. We strive for continued growth and we transform our viewpoints. So that's how Quest was born. This is a K-5 program, and it's going to look a little bit different in K2 versus 3-5, but I'll give you a little overview of what that looks like in a minute. A place that I really like to start when it comes to gifted education is understanding giftedness. So because of past practices, many of us have this idea that a straight A student is associated with giftedness. And in reality, the true definition for giftedness is more than just good grades. So giftedness is really defined as a student that demonstrates high ability or potential in one or more areas. It's not necessarily a student who is exhibiting excellence or high performance across the board. And this is when compared to other students their age or their peers. They have an exceptional ability to think, reason, and make judgments. And this is all kind of summed up in this last phrase here, that anyone can be gifted, but not everyone is gifted. So that idea that, there isn't a specific label, there isn't a one type of student that is gifted. Giftedness can look, and come in many different forms. So that being said, as a district, we're committed to providing every child with a rigorous education tailored to their specific needs. So an abbreviated version of our Quest mission statement is basically that we are looking to reach all students where they are and challenge them appropriately, equitably assess all students to determine whether there's a need for additional learning support in their educational program, and provide students who do exhibit that need challenging modifications to their learning day. Yeah, we can go to the next slide, Sarah. Did we lose Sarah?
Oh, no, we did lose Sarah. Sorry about that, guys. We're having some technical difficulty. Hold on one second. I can find what slide we were on and I will share my screen. If you just excuse me 1 second. We'll be on slide 21, Jenna. Interesting.
It's going to be the one with the 3-tiered diagram, the triangle diagram.
There we go.
Perfect. That's the one.
That's the one. So hold on 1 second, guys. I have faces on the side of my screen, so it's hard to see what I'm actually sharing. So hold on 1 second. Slideshow, play from Clarence slide. There you go, Jenna.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so just to give you a little snapshot of the Quest program and how it's structured, it's a multi-tiered system of support. So basically what that means, you can look at the diagram. There are different levels of intervention that reach different size groupings of students. So tier 1 intervention, that reaches everyone. So a lot of the programs and things that we're doing that came earlier in this presentation, all the wonderful things that teachers are doing in their classroom to differentiate instruction, that's going to be reaching all students. Then we have tier 2 services, which is on top of the differentiated instruction. Obviously, it's 20 to 25% of students, and based on assessments, based on observations of these students, they are going to be getting a little bit more in their learning program. That happens with all grades. It's going to look a little bit different in K2 than it does in 3-5, but there will be additional supports there for those tier 2 students. Then finally in tier 3, this is only for grades 3 through 5, but as the smallest population of students, and those are those that 3 to 5% in every grade level that are found eligible for that intensive intervention, which is pull out instruction with me once a week for additional support to their learning. So in order to identify students that are in need of that additional support in their learning, we're going to be using the listed identification measures here. The first two are ones that the district has been using for quite some time, as I'm sure you are familiar with. So the DRA, that's administered 3 times a year. We are going to be using the spring data for fall identification or for services starting in the fall. The Linkit benchmark assessment for math, we're going to be using the spring data for that. And then the 2 new things that we're bringing to the district for this program is the cognitive abilities test or COGAT, which will be administered this spring to all 2nd, 3rd, and 4th graders. That is a nonverbal reasoning assessment that assesses basically how a child thinks, how their brain works. And then lastly, we have teacher referrals. So just to give you a couple of points about the identification process, it is going to happen annually. So it always will happen in the spring for fall identification. We'll gather all of the data on students. It's universal screening, so every child gets all of those assessment measures or those identification measures that I just listed, and all of that is analyzed for potential identification for tier 2 and tier 3 services in the fall. We will have other rounds of assessment in the fall and in the winter, but those are for newcomers to the district. So existing students in the district will all get assessed in the spring for fall identification. That being said, there are no Quest services this year for the remainder of this year. We're going to be assessing in the spring, but that's going to be for fall services. So no one is going to start with tier 2 or tier 3 services this year. And all scores will be released to you through Linkit in the fall. So all of those assessment measures, DRA, Linkit, benchmark assessment, and COGAT will be, you guys will have access to that in the fall. And then finally, we would love your input. So if you go to the district website under the Quest page, you'll find several links, several places where you can click on the Quest parent input form. And that is a place for you. It's basically a questionnaire for you to give us more information about your child, how your child learns, what they like to do in their free time, what are some things that they excel in, what are some things that they struggle with. It gives us a much better picture of the whole learner. And just to be clear, this is not going to be used for identification purposes, but it will be used for understanding the needs of your child as a learner. I will be getting the information, but I will also be sharing this information with all of your child's teachers. That form is open and available now for you to fill out, and that will be closing on June 2nd. So you have from now until June 2nd if you'd like to fill that out. And I know that was a lot of information, but like I said, please visit the district website and find the Quest page for much more information and useful links for you to hopefully fill in some of the rest of the details.
I'm also seeing some questions in the chat about tiered supports and what does that mean? Does it mean for students who need help or students who need enrichment? Both. So when we talk about tiers of support, tier 1 is your general classroom instruction and how the classroom educator can meet your child's needs. How can they differentiate, challenge them within the classroom setting? Tier 2 is small group support, whether that's small group for enrichment or small group for remediation and extra skill-based learning. It can happen within the classroom. It could be AIS, as Ken was talking about earlier tonight, or it could be a group in our STEAM enrichment cycles or with Jenna to do that gifted programming, right? And then tier 3 is more of that really small pull-out program and support. And typically it can be one-on-one or 2 to 3 students. So when we talk about tiers, it's a multi-tiered system of support. It's not just engagement in students who are struggling and need more help. We're also supporting our gifted learners because they need enrichment in the program. So I just want to make sure that it's sort of a diamond. It's not just a pyramid. It kind of hits students across all of the continuum. So when you hear, oh, my child had tier 2 support, it doesn't connotate to something specific. It just means that they received small group to meet their needs. Maybe they're a little bit reading ahead in their general education classroom and they're getting support, or maybe they just need a little bit of boost with math facts. Really what that means is small group pullout or within the classroom setting. I'll clarify that a little bit more at the end. So what percent is tier 2 for enrichment? So I'm just going to go back a slide. That's about 20 to 25% of students. And that tier 3, that intensive pullout intervention for grades 3 through 5, research about gifted education and programming is about 3 to 5% of students in a population. And that's Princeton population, not like general national benchmark population. That's our own district population of peers within our own programming. Great. And then we'll take more Q&A at the end, but I just wanted to clarify that because I was seeing some common questions. Welcome back, Ms. Moore.
Dr. Chu, can I add something about the tiers?
Yes, please.
The thing that is also, I think, should be noted is that they're dynamic. So sometimes a student may be in tier 2 for extra support in an area that they need to be shored up in. And once they've mastered that skill and they receive the support that they need, then they go back to the classroom, or we push into the classroom to help them. So we, the goal is to get them in, give them what they need, and then get them back to the classroom where they're getting the most engaging experience that they can have.
Thank you, Ken. I think that's a really, really good point. It's very flexible. And finally, before we move on, Jenna, do you mind answering? There's a question here about 2E, which is twice exceptional learners.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you mind answering that of how we're helping identify those students and their needs for gifted programming, as well as maybe English language learners?
So just to clarify for everyone, 2E or twice exceptional learners are learners who need support in other areas of their education. So they may have a 504 plan or they may have an IEP, but they are showing behaviors and they're exhibiting behaviors of giftedness in other areas. That's what I was referring to when I said that anyone can be gifted. You know, we sort of have this older mentality that if a student needs support, then how could they possibly be gifted? Well, we understand now that that is not the case, that 2E learners are students who may need support, additional supports in some areas of their education. So the COGAT test that I mentioned, that is, and then again, that is an assessment that we're going to be adding to our identification process. And it is something that was specifically chosen for this reason, because it is nonverbal, meaning there is no reading involved in taking the assessment. So anybody that does not have English as their native language, anyone that may be, lower in reading, but may excel in other areas, this assessment is geared towards reaching everyone. It also is an assessment that, as I said, it assesses reasoning. It's not something that can be studied for. It's not an assessment of achievement or of what a student knows. It's how they learn. So this is an assessment that's going to really reach out to that population specifically. Then we also have the teacher referrals. So I've already spoken to the staff about those behaviors that we're looking for, and trying to quell some of those misconceptions about giftedness in the past, and really trying to highlight those learners that maybe do need support in other areas, or maybe they do have a bit of a language barrier and we're able to see their gifts in other areas. And those teachers are really going to highlight those students. So we do have measures that we're taking to make this process as equitable as possible.
Hi, everyone. Well, we can't talk about our elementary school programs without talking about STEAM. So you can tell I just love my job. I think it's just such a tremendously unique and special part of our elementary school program. And so I just wanted to highlight kind of three activities that went on, at least in my school, because we know that every school is a little bit different, schedules are a little bit different, but there are some big ideas that travel through STEAM regardless of your school. There are definitely lessons that are taught in there that are connected to curriculum, to Amplify, that is based on, we chose this program Amplify because it supports next gen science standards. And so generally the lessons that are taught, if they're connected to content and Amplify, lessons that are being taught by the classroom teacher are connected in some way to next generation science standards. We also do, and what's so wonderfully special about us also is that we can pivot and we have the flexibility of something very special is happening in our schools. And so at Littlebrook, we have a female mallard that has, for the last 4 years, I'm not sure, Louis, 4 years or so, it has made its nest in our courtyard garden. And so you can imagine, as we are now counting down the days to when we might have little ducklings that need to be let out of our garden, we do a lot of work around ducks, especially in some of the primary grades, because they have essential questions in some of their units that are about like the needs of animals. Well, let's talk about what are duck and duckling. So one of the pictures you see is one of our students, Oliver. They were worried that the ducklings, when they walked around in our courtyard garden, there might be some problems. There might be some holes that they might need to slip, they might fall into. And so we took our STEAM Lab notebooks out there and we had to learn a little information about a duckling and the size. And then they scattered around our courtyard garden looking for problems that we might then need to remediate. And he identified this grate as a possibility. I'm just going to go very quickly. At the bottom, you'll see there's something, we do a lot of work in systems, around systems, whether that's mechanical systems or natural systems. And there's something called an energy ball that the students took outside. Besides just studying that system itself, the mechanical system, they were able to apply, these were fourth graders, some of their work around circuits that they had done with their classroom teacher, and to see that a new blade of grass was a conductor of electricity and they could get this energy ball. And then just the last one, we were talking about conductive materials, lots of hands-on. So this is engineering design, this is computer science, starting with Scratch Junior in primary grades, working up through Scratch in the upper elementary grades. And then the second half of this slide, and Ms. Tews, if you would go ahead and play it, but turn the sound off because you'll just hear me babbling. So this is a part of an enrichment cycle. This student came in and knew immediately he wanted to make a water wheel. He wanted to build this system. He had been doing some studying about it on his own. We had to talk a little bit about what his definition of success would be. He wanted it to be able to move freely, what our constraints were working with the materials we had in the lab. But this is just one example of some of the work that happens in the enrichment cycles. You'll see I listed students self-select, teachers act as the facilitators in this, and this is about deep dives, often stretching. Some of the schools do our contests that they'll make available, and students can say, yep, I want to take part of that, and they jump in. So our STEAM and enrichment, wonder, creativity, innovation, that's what it's all about. Thank you so much.
Hi, thank you all for your patience as I got knocked off my internet. I had a little moment of a heart attack happening. So I'll speak to Tiger to really focus more on that social emotional component for students and making school a joyful place where students can decompress. We started to study the effects of therapy work, especially with young learners. So we were very graciously donated a puppy that had high therapy potential as identified by breeders and trainers. Tiger is a golden doodle. He was donated by Tri-States Bernedoodle, which is a small breeder in South Jersey. And he's our first official therapy dog. All of our elementary students across the district voted on his name in the fall. They were told that it had to be a Princeton theme, so they ended on Tiger because they all become tigers by the time they get to the high school. He's finishing up training this spring. He'll do one more intensive board and train, and then he'll go for his certification test. We're waiting until he's fully certified to bring him into the building with students. He's done a wonderful job. He's come to a lot of staff PD. So he's met a lot of the staff at this point, and the students are very eager for him to start. He lives with my family and I in the evenings. and then we'll come into work. We will have opt-in forms for students to meet Tiger and designated spaces. He is non-shedding and hypoallergenic. We tried to be as conscious as possible about our students that might be more sensitive to allergies. But if a student is, a little uncomfortable around dogs, if they have a more severe allergy, there will be permission forms to meet Tiger, and you'll know well in advance before he'll be in the buildings. So we're really looking forward to that this spring. So a little bit of our curriculum overview, just so we can have sort of a little roadmap in front of us and that you can refer back to after this evening is concluded. So in kindergarten, we start off with Teachers College Readers and Writers Workshop. I know it was mentioned earlier, it really allows for our teachers to meet with small groups of students and confer on pieces and provide that guided reading and structured feedback. There's also writer celebrations that happen through the year to celebrate the wonderful work that our students do. We currently use Ready Math as we're gearing towards that math workshop model. Remember, that's a methodology, not a curriculum. It really focuses on center-based approach the same way that TC's Readers and Writers Workshop focuses on that center small group work that provides students with lots of deep, rich, meaningful feedback. In science, we're using Amplify Science, and some of our buildings also bring in some mystery science elements. And for social studies, we have TCI's History Alive. You'll also notice that we have foundations listed here. Remember that we're just switching to that MZ structured literacy block in the fall to incorporate all 5 of those elements of the National Reading Panel. First and second grade are very, very similar. The only thing is that foundations will stay in second grade for this coming fall. Why? Its scope and sequence is a bit different. So we didn't want to throw students who have had 2 full years in the foundation scope and sequence into a completely different sequence for their final year of the program. We're going to let those students finish off their foundations, and the structured literacy block will roll up with the current K-1 students for fall. 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, the curriculum looks very similar. The change is that Words Their Way replaces foundations at that level, but that structured literacy block will be there in 3 years for all students K through 5. We are doing a math program review, so you may see some news about that. We're looking at our math programs and math pedagogy and methodology. Okay. Go to our next slide. Some report card updates. So we're putting together a report card committee that'll meet in this summer. We have educators from across all 4 of our elementary schools and all of our grade bands that we're working together to create a more comprehensive report card. So on that report card, I know we had a really great question earlier about why DRA scores aren't shared. We want to have full transparency with parents, starting with data scores this fall, so that your child's DRA score will be listed on the front of the report card as of fall 2023. And you'll also see a range band there of what the expected DRA are for that grade level. So just to give you an idea of where your child is in terms of reading performance, we're also going to be sharing out things like our iReady scores through our Linkit platform in the fall with you as well. So more data coming your way in the fall so that you have a little bit more depth about exactly where your child is. Report card items, again, featuring those updated items, so they're coming. Okay. So some internal assessments that you might see once we open up Linkit. We're working with them right now to make sure that the parent portal piece looks really good for fall, so that you'll have some nice data views for your students. Spelling, currently we have foundations. That'll switch over to our structured literacy assessment. It's essentially a spelling assessment. And we're measuring those, encoding those writing and spelling skills, and Words Their Way does the same. For reading, we have that DRA 3 that Mr. Eicher talked about earlier. That's given K through 5. And that measures the instructional reading levels for our students. We will also be piloting iReady ELA diagnostic for the fall. It's about a half-an-hour assessment. It's going to give you some more data points around things like phonological awareness, deeper comprehension, and just more of a full profile in addition to that DRA. Your student already has the same assessment for math, so it's just acting as a really nice complement on the ELA side of things. We started with our dyslexia screener. We have Early Bird for the first time this year. We piloted in all kindergarten and 1st grade classrooms, as Mr. Eicher mentioned earlier in the evening. We're going to finish off K-1 this spring, but moving into next year, we're just going to do this assessment with 1st graders. We found that the tech readiness of kindergartners wasn't quite there, especially for the beginning of the year to be on an iPad. For the kindergartners, it takes 45 minutes, which is just very lengthy for them to sit there on a tech device. For 1st grade, the assessment's only about half an hour, so it's much more manageable to break up through the week. For older students or new move-ins, we'll be using the Dibbles 8th edition. Math, we have our Link It and iReady diagnostic. So you might say, oh, they sound a little similar. They look a little similar in scores. So they're a bit different. Link It measures end of the year benchmarks, where iReady is more diagnostic and adaptive based on your child's performance level. So those are the difference between those two pieces. So again, Link It is really measuring end of the year standards, where the iReady is more adaptive. And then writing, we have our Teachers College on-demand writing prompts.
Great.
Okay.
So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second, and we have some questions in the queue. So if you have other questions, please type them in our Q&A box, and we will do our best to get to them. Real quick, because I just saw a comment about Link It. So Link It is interesting. Link It is a data warehouse. So that's where Ms. Peluso said that, you know, we would be sending out reports in the fall through Link It. It holds all of our data. PowerSchool is sort of our reporting tool and our student information system. So that it requires like our attendance data, grades are all in there. Link It holds sort of all of our assessment data. I mean, they also have standards aligned grade level benchmarks. So we give those in our math courses. I want to say in grade 2nd and up, Sarah, is that correct? Yes. So you haven't heard of it. It might be that your child is not in that grade yet. So your child will take that fall, winter, and spring, and then we sort of measure them against end of the year standards. And it's a great predictor for the school district and, you know, for you about how your child does on the NJSLA, which will be, you know, in May for grades 3 and 5 through 5 for our elementary schools. Not that I want to talk about assessment windows right now, but that information will be coming shortly from your buildings if it hasn't already, about dates and schedules. How are the enriched students identified? So as we spoke, it will be through different nonverbal aptitude tests such as COGAT, our reading and writing assessments, our math assessments, teacher input, parent input, all of the above through a rubric, and that will be shared with families to kind of see the process and the scoring.
I saw one question in here, Dr. Tu. After the K-5 gifted program, is that going to be our gifted or honors program from middle school or high school? So I want to speak to that really quickly. I kind of want to dispel that notion. We don't believe in tracking students. Students pop for potential at all different times. So just because they weren't in Quest in 3rd grade does not mean that they're not going to be an honors math student in high school. Mm-hmm. And vice versa. If they were in Quest in 4th grade, they might not have that love of math by the time they get to high school, or maybe they really want to take more AP history courses. We're not tracking them and slotting them and determining in 2nd grade that that's going to be your honors math class in 11th grade. Emily's Wonder Lab. So we have elementary parents on here. I'm sure you might have seen her on Netflix. She's a wonderful NASA scientist who went to MIT. She just released a short video about how she was never identified for something like a gifted and talented program, but still went to MIT and was very successful. So I just want to say we're very flexible in thinking about Quest and really wanting to dig into deeper skills and not tracking just for academics.
Yep. Going against that idea of bright versus gifted, again, that we spoke about earlier, and we'll have more information and sharing, you know, throughout the spring and fall about that. And then talk about programming at the middle level. So we have the advanced math courses, we have advanced Spanish, we have Mandarin before school, we have enrichment opportunities through our exploratory courses, and we have after school programming. So there's more opportunity for students. And at the high school level, I mean, you know, accelerated and AP classes would hit all of those marks. That being said, we have gotten several questions about middle school programming. We're building K-5 first because we felt that that was the greater need of having that level tier 3 support. Remember that top 3 to 5% identification process and pull out support, because we have other measures and other abilities to do that at the middle school level. That is not to say that down the road we would look at you know, asking for personnel to support a 6-8 program as well. But for 23-24, this would be for, as we said, support for K2 with push-in with Mrs. Peluso and working with staff, and a pull-out model in grades 3 through 5. So a more formal program in grades 3 through 5. And then Sarah, I'm not sure if you saw some questions about the Continental Math League, and I know some of our math CTLs are on here as well to help answer that.
They don't show up on my end. Would you be able to read,
Sure.
Refresh, log back in? Would you read them to me and I can answer them?
Of course. What does the school do to prepare the students besides offering sample questions on Canvas? But some of the updating of the samples stopped. Does the teacher who administer the questions go over the questions and answers at the end of the meet so the students can get feedback so that they can improve the next time? So one, how do we prepare students if we do prepare them? And two, do the staff go over the answers at the end of the meet?
Okay, great question. So this was really our first year rolling it out. So we were trying to get acclimated to it and see sort of what the student interest and capacity was. So we did this as an opt-in program, which really meant that a lot of that ownership was on the student. So practice problems were posted weekly. They did stop just because our Continental Math Leagues have now wrapped up. They wrapped up in March. So those practice problems stopped a little bit right before the last meet of the season. So this year it was really an independent study model for students getting ready to prep for those tests. We'd love feedback on how that worked for families. The CTLs and I are going to meet at the end of the year to sort of talk about what was a really great highlight for Math Continental League and what do we want to change for Continental Math League for next year. So if you would like to email me input on what worked and what you might want to see change, we're really open to feedback just because this was the first year and we'd like the program to grow and be meaningful to families and students.
Great. Sorry, I was just answering another question. So Marianne and Deneen, is math and science taught the same way in the DLI program except in Spanish? How does this impact standardized testing since children are used to learning in another language? It's a great question.
Okay, I'll try and answer. That's a huge question. So the curriculum is the same for math at Community Park in DLI. And science. So when you test in English and you're being taught in Spanish or another language in an immersion program, as we explain at all of the information sessions, there is the need to sort of understand that in grades 3, 4, and 5, which is where standardized testing begins, looking at standardized testing for proficiency is not necessarily the only place or best place to look. So any immersion program will talk about that fact if the students are being tested in a language other than they're being taught in. However, that being said, one of the reasons we have been teaching math in the target language is because of the nature of mathematics. Numeracy, numbers are the same regardless of the language spoken. However, there of course is a vocabulary component. And as with all aspects of the program, we're looking at right now whether we would continue with math in Spanish for all 6th grade levels of the CP experience, or if we might shift that or change how we teach math. Based upon, again, some of the program reviews that have been done with Cal and also with Tri-States.
Thank you. And then we have another question in the chat just about, how do we prepare kids for a world we don't know what's going to look like with AI and technology and things like that. I started teaching a very long time ago, and that was the same thing. It was sort of the turn of the century. And those were the questions we were asking ourselves. And I think one of the things that our strategic plan does is it talks about the skills of a portrait of the graduate. What are the skills that we value in our Princeton public school community, such as, critical thinking and communication and things along those lines. So our district is going to be coming together to work as a team of and determine, well, what does innovation look like at the elementary level? What is a skill progression from pre-K and kindergarten up to 5th grade, from 6th to 8th grade, from 9th to 12th grade, so that our staff can really have clear benchmarks of working in some of these skills? Because I used to always say, because I was a history teacher, middle school social studies teacher, in one edition of the New York Times or Wall Street Journal, whatever paper you read today, was all the information given in like 10 years in like 1899. We are information overload. And so we need to teach students how to analyze the information critique the information, be critical consumers and digesters of it, and then communicate that information, right? So these are the skills that we need to be working on no matter what the content is. Now, some content, math is math, right? We're learning calculus, we're going to be learning calculus down the road, but it's all about how do we learn it so that we can communicate our understanding and develop a deep understanding. So we will be convening a district committee this summer to look at skill progressions for those portrait of a graduate skills, and then spending the next school year workshopping it, working with different parent groups, school groups, coming to PTO meetings, etc., and then presenting it to our full staff the year after and start talking about, well, what does assessment look like of these skills? And it's not typical, right? It's more of that project-based learning experience. Sort of some of the things that Martha was talking about earlier. This isn't a paper and pencil test to measure these skills, giving students opportunities to have a voice and choice in their learning and performance of some of these skills. So it's really exciting work, really happy to do it. And I think we just have to be ready to think about that. Now, that's not to say we're not looking at, our computer science curriculum and things along those lines as well, to ensure that our students are ready, willing, and able to enter the workforce when they leave us. And I think also colleges and universities and other prep programs besides those in that post-high school career are also looking at different certificates, trades, and degrees than they might have been even last year or the year before. So yes, we're always thinking about how can we better prepare our students. Other questions came up earlier in the meeting. Lexia. So Lexia was a pilot this year. So several teachers took us up on that pilot, and that's why you might have heard about it or not heard about it. It is for all students. It's not just for students who want additional or need phonological awareness. It really is a program that benefits all learners, and that is why we are purchasing it for the next school year. But we wanted to pilot it first to make sure that it was a good fit with our programming and with our staff. We always like to make sure that we get feedback about certain things. So that will be coming in September for elementary learners. The question earlier about starting DLI in second grade. Yes, thank you to the one participant said it was updated on the website today. So yes, that we would take up to the fall of second grade entering into our DLI program. I'm trying to make sure I have all the other questions right now.
I see one. How are all students assessed for dyslexia, and how many times in a year are they tested? And is it a parent's responsibility to identify evidence? That's a great question. So New Jersey code law asks that we screen students with one or more indicator before the fall semester of second grade is concluded. That's a really weighty responsibility to identify one indicator, because there are so many things that can count towards an indicator. It can look like poor spelling performance. It can look like oral reading fluency struggle. It can look like a comprehension deficit. It can look like a phonological deficit, which is truly at the heart of dyslexia. So we want to make sure that no student is missed. So we do a universal screener for dyslexia with the early bird. Students get it 3 times a year in first grade. We piloted it in K this year. We're moving towards a model where every student will get a dyslexia screener 3 times a year in first grade. Why? Because we want to measure their progress over the year. When they come in September, they might be a little bit newer to the iPad. They've had the summer off. We want to make sure that we're getting really accurate growth snapshots of where they are 3 times a year in their first grade year, just because it is such a great year of learning and growth acquisition in terms of early literacy instruction.
Mm-hmm. That's great. But yes, the school district is a partner in that. We are not expecting parents to do that heavy lifting. But if you have concerns, please reach out, because we want to make sure that we can address them.
Can I add something to
yes.
that just real quick? If there is a family history of dyslexia, that's really good information to share with your student's teacher or the AIS staff at the school.
Thank you. That is, yeah, absolutely correct.
Yes, we know it's very, very hereditary. We know that it's 20% of any given population. So it's a very, very common learning disability. What it might look like, it runs from more mild to more severe. So a student with a mild form of dyslexia looks very different from a student with a severe form. Okay, good question. The kids are told they would get certificates or awards from Math League. Yes, we had to bother the company about 10 times, but I'm happy to announce as of Tuesday, the awards have arrived. I'm going to pick them up tomorrow, so they should be in the hands of our students next week. We had to bug the company several times, but the medals are there for our top 6 overall scores. So the points were tabulated across all 5 meets, and your top 6 scorers in 4th and in 5th will get medals, and every student who participated, even if it was one meet, will get a participation award, and they're very nice. They're laminated and they're very, very nice. They're on nice cardstock.
Great. Thank you for that update. And then this is a great question too. The gifted children at the tier 3 level may also have non-academic needs since they typically have asynchronous development. So what's great about Jenna Peluso is that she's a trained gifted educator and has experience working with students and that. So Jenna, I don't know if you want to kind of highlight something there.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And what I will say from my experience is that the program that I developed for those tier 3 students that get those services, it's not strictly academic. It's problem-based, it's project-based, it's multidisciplinary. So we're working on things that touch on all different areas of what it means to not only be a learner, but be a functioning part of society. So there's a lot of different facets. It's not strictly academic by any means.
Yep. Thank you. And also too, we also have other staff members such as our counselors. If the student has a child study team, case manager, right, that would partner with Jenna and their classroom teacher to form a team around the student to ensure that their different needs are being met, of course, as well. And then great question about summer packets and summer assignments. So tomorrow we're presenting to our Student Achievement Committee our optional K-5 summer reading and summer math assignments. There's a web page, it's beautiful. So once that goes through our board committee and through board agenda and things, we'll be starting to advertise that in early May and sharing that with families. But I do want to emphasize that it is optional, but it's a wonderful resource. I highly recommend checking it out. So it's there for those who want it. If you want to not think about school all of July, but in August you're thinking, maybe I should just kind of just rush up on some things, it's there waiting for you. And it's really good work that some of the folks on this phone call put together. So thank you all for the work in doing that. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say shameless shout out because many people on this call worked very hard on the packets. There is the math in Spanish for any students in DLI there. You have summer reading recommendations from the library and our fantastic media specialist. There are packets for enrichment. So it's a treasure trove of great activities.
Yeah. And on that note, because it's almost about 7:45, I'm going to close Q&A. That being said, you can reach out with questions. I think Sarah is a good point person for this. We have our building administrators as well. If you have something specific to your building and you see some of the wonderful staff that we have on this call. I really appreciate your participation tonight. Thank you for your questions. As you can see, a lot of great things happening and it will continue to happen with your feedback and support. So thank you for your time and your partnership, and wish you all a wonderful, strong start to the school year, because believe it or not, we have about 8 weeks left, which is pretty shocking to hear. So lots of wonderful end of the year activities. I see big smiles on some of our staff's faces, and I'm sure the parents as well. So, so thank you. Have a wonderful evening. We will put the recording and the slide deck on the website for those to view. So thank you.
Thank you so much.